Hello and welcome to FinextraTV's View From series. I'm Hannah Wallace, and today to give us a review on Sustainable Finance.LIVE is Richard Pearce from Responsible Risk. Hello Richard, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Glad to hear it, because you've been working incredibly hard on Sustainable Finance.LIVE, which today I'd like to take a step back from to give a review of, because this was a first virtual workshop in a series of events designed to create actionable ESG strategies and really create a platform where partnerships and people with a like-minded goal can come together and turn a strategy into reality. I'd just like to say that it was brilliant to witness such great minds coming together in these unique co-creation workshops and talk about how investment opportunities are changing the greenhouse gas landscape. I came away from the event feeling informed and really positive about this step forward for the community. So well done.
Thank you very much. Well, it was definitely a team effort from everyone, on the advisory board and the participants, and everyone at Finextra. So, and the lovely thing is, it's the audience's show as well, right? The energy they put in is what they get back. So, thanks for that. But it was very much a team effort.
So that's the event in a very small nutshell, because we also learnt that investment and asset management is by no means a simple topic. So for those that weren't able to attend the event, can you tell us a bit more about the overriding aim and goals of the event?
Yeah, I mean, the aim of this is that there is a huge amount of great work going on from anybody you can think of, from policy, regulation, technical, legal, but a lot of it for many people feels complex and pretty arcane and slow moving, which isn't necessarily true. But what we're trying to do is to really bring together some sort of key actors in the value chain, investees, investors, data providers, and go, well, okay, would this work for you, this unique combination of people we've put together? And can we get you the money, the capital, to do the things you want to do to reduce greenhouse gases? And if we can't, what's stopping it? And what can we then do about it practically to fix that? So we're all about trying to sort of spot take the fintech approach to, what's the process, what's the friction, and then can we fix it?
Mm-hmm. And one of the people who helped you sort of achieve that goal was Keith McCrane, CEO of Core Energy, who kicked off day one's presentations about talking about solving the integration problem and addressing the financial gap. He used the use case of compressed air energy storage and talked us through the opportunities and frustrations someone in his position will go through with these projects. What was sort of the crux of his presentation, and what was sort of your analysis of what he was trying to portray? Let's start there.
Well, the crux of his presentation, which if you refer to the sort of previous answer, was that he represented, assets of that class that are doing new and innovative things at scale, which can really make a difference to, in this instance, greenhouse gases. But we're looking at anybody that might be, improving social conditions, governance conditions, and not just greenhouse, but soil, whatever it may be. But basically, the plucky, protagonist who's got a great idea, and the essence of his presentation was, once you listened to it, you went, okay, I want him to be doing his job because he's a good guy and that's a good company. But he was then saying, but I can't get access to the long-term capital that I need at scale to actually sustain the business that, over the time that it's going to actually exist. He says that from a very informed position, having worked in project finance as well. So that really set up for us, that whole problem. And I'm always using that analogy of the water behind the dam not flowing downstream. Yeah. And he was your downstream actor in that instance.
And of course, it was no coincidence that his presentation was followed by the lovely Mayor from EBRD, who talked us through the issues and challenges of early stage investing in sustainable projects. Run us through your analysis of her presentation on development banking and investment risk, and really the significance of her presentation in relation to someone like Keith and his company?
Yeah, well, it was absolutely wonderful that she contributed, because it's quite tough to get the bankers out and talk about these things, warts and all. And she's super passionate about this area and immensely knowledgeable. So the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development is there to put together stimulus packages in a way that actually bring many other forms of capital along beside it, because they've taken the sort of one of the initial bold steps. So in a way, she represented really well the combination between government policy, where they say we need to do something about climate change, then their investment in the EBRD, as the stakeholders are basically governments, providing stimulus capital, which then will bring private capital together to give the money to a firm like Keith. So in a way, you kind of go, well, what's the problem? Sounds like a perfect solution. But of course, these stakeholders, have got all sorts of agendas, which are quite right. The citizen wants to know that their money is being used for something that they believe they voted for. So they have to have lots of governance associated with that. So she explained very clearly, as a counterpoint to Keith, these are the considerations I have to work within, and I have to work within the constraints of, a risk and governance committee who, she didn't criticize, but she said this is the practical reality. But we then started to move on to, obviously, what can we do? What can we do about that? Or is it just, it's a fait accompli, pack up shop, go home kind of thing? And obviously that wasn't the case.
All right, and of course, Keith and Maya were followed by Elena from Refinitiv, who focused our minds on the importance of data sets and distinguishing between different shades of green. She reminded the audience that ESG, after all, is only 3 letters and means different things to different people. So could you give us a summary of her presentation and also what the 3 speakers covered in the panel that ended day 1 of the event?
Yeah, well, I think, Elena, the essence of what she spoke about and the reason that we asked her to join was because a lot of this comes down to data. Pete's obviously talking about, what he wants and the information he provides to justify his business case. And Maya's talking about what she needs to justify to her risk committee that she's going to make the investment. So a lot of it's down to data. There's a world of corporate disclosure, which is how do I manage my business and operate it? And then there's a world of sort of impact, which is, what difference is this going to make to the world if I deploy my capital in this project versus another one? So, Elena reflected that into saying that there is a world of different need across the sort of investment community. And what the EU taxonomy, and she's part of the technical working group, is trying to do is to give a baseline that says, you can compare one thing with another, but also open the door to two difficult worlds, which is how do we create that baseline, knowing that it's not fully sufficient for the total requirement, but also do so much that it builds trust in that baseline, and yet still try to leave the door open for alternative data coming in. So she framed that quite tricky challenge.
Mm-hmm. No, it was a brilliant panel, and clearly because it sparked a lot of questions in our virtual audience, even though we weren't in a physical debate. And now coming to day 2, before going into more detail into the sessions, can you run us the thought behind this sort of format for the event? This was the learn by doing part.
Yeah, that's right. So, the whole idea behind it was really that, I got bored with, a lifetime of going to conferences and listening to PowerPoints, and only the good stuff was the Q&A and the coffee. So I wanted to get to that as quickly as possible and bring a lot of the energy from the world of hackathons, where you get, students, if you will, told, right, solve this problem by midnight, here's pizza and beer. And then they just kind of pile in and collaborate and kind of work through stuff. And they learn as they go through the process. So the lean back, obviously, is to frame the context as we've just described it. And the lean in was the Q&A to really go, tell me a bit more, because actually I'm not sure I understood you. But this second piece, which is learn by doing, is, okay, fine, it's great to posit a load of problems, but let's try and frame some solutions. So we broke it into 3 workshops, and each one of those workshops tackled different elements of the challenge. So first was on project finance, which was really what Keith and Maya kind of opened on. We wanted to talk about impact investing as well. So we brought in another team there, Justin Hugh, who we could have accommodated on day one if we'd had the time, but we did day two. And then the third session, obviously back to data, as it always is, which we had Elena involved in. So each one of those, basically what we did, we said, I use the phrase again, we can't just sort of say to an audience, join in and we're all going to have a collective mindset of what the problem is, what the solution is, and we're going to fix it in an hour and 3/4.
Sure.
So let's think about this in a paint by numbers approach. Let's give ourselves a canvas that we're working on. Let's put some frame references in it. We know that 1 equals red and blue equals 2 or whatever. And from that, we'll walk people through. They'll know where they're going to. They'll know the progress they're making, and they'll know, eventually the picture will start to emerge as the colour gets applied. And the colour is the discussion, the debate, and the interaction, which we facilitated through, various digital media. It's an interesting way of going about things, but I think it worked really well.
I think it worked brilliantly well. And now homing in on session 1 again, investing in green energy storage and securitizing green investments. What were the challenges you were addressing in this session, and where did you get up to with addressing those challenges?
Yeah, well, I think it was quite amazing to watch. I mean, obviously you had Keith again and Maya as the two protagonists. We took them into that workshop because that was such a great dynamic. And then we had Richard from Elasticloud, as our facilitator, and he was sitting there, using a mind mapping technology, just literally doing that paint by numbers in front of our eyes, showing us all of the aspects of the ordering of thinking that was coming out of the two players. Now, Keith was, obviously, he's a frustrated entrepreneur. He wants to get on and, build his business and save the planet. So he was making it pretty clear that, that's what he wants. Maya was again going into more detail about, what she would like to do, what she can do, and so forth. So really, we got down to, I think, the essence of it. We sort of felt that that risk function, which is obviously the heart of any banking function, as you would wish it to be, but is perhaps a little bit of a herd instinct. We'll do what others have done. We'll do it when the risk has been sort of mitigated by the early stage investors. We'll do it when the model fits our model. And it was a little, naturally safe, but perhaps too slow paced for the emergency, which is what we're talking about here, an emergency, climate emergency. So we focused in on that and said, well, what can we do about it? Is it a cultural issue? And actually, a lot of the groups that when we polled them said, yeah, it's a cultural issue. Maya, I really like the fact that she pushed back and said that's too easy. Because that's true, right? I mean, every conference I've ever gone to, people always say it's culture. What can you do about culture? Oh, it's my CEO is no good. Can you change him? No. Well, end of it. We don't have to do anything. So I love that pushback. And she quite rightly sort of said, well, what we should do here is look at more than that. And I think it is about models and data and risk and making it more real time, making it more proactive, predictive. And there are ways of doing that so that we accelerate the acceptance of new data into the risk model. We don't abandon risk. We just are more adaptive.
All right, and then coming to the second session on impact investing, which you demonstrated is best addressed with deep human insight from the investor in the investee's business. Those were your words. But how do you do this at scale is the big question. And what did you learn from this session?
Well, I was very much learning along with everyone else here because Fred Warren, ran the session for us, founder of 1 to 14 and an ex-Microsoft colleague. And Fred, said, look, we've really got to look at this from the perspective of, trust and understanding and empathy in human relationships. And we all kind of went, really? I'm sure it's not all about that. But he made the case very strongly. And actually, when you think about it, you go, yeah, because if I'm going to do impact investing, then I've really got to understand the business. I'm not in the sort of secondary market of buying some shares or some debt that somebody's already, analysed and put into the markets as a security. I'm actually talking to that sort of founder of that company, like a Keith, and I'm saying, no, do I think you're a good risk? You as a person, you as a person with expertise, your team, your proposition, is the impact that you're making on greenhouse gas matched by what you're doing with your social policy, what you're doing with your governance over a long period of time, so I can see whether the payback on my investment is going to make the impact that we all spoke about. So it is about seeing the whites of the eyes and following through. So yeah, of course, therefore it's about trust, it's about relationship, it's about empathy. But then we got to the question, which is, well, how do you do the scale bit? Because getting experts with those relationships, to do enough scale to hit the needs of a return on investment is pretty tough. And that's really where Fred walked us through some of the key levers and some of the key things that we need to do. And we don't ever intend to come up with an absolute answer, but I think where we were moving towards was this sort of world of the human kind of machine interface, which is where can we put technology that takes away the mundane, repetitive, form-filling, report-producing function, and our staff, we can then focus them in on, the pithy questions that reveal the real truth, kind of thing. And so we went on that journey, and there's still more work to be done, but it was a journey for me, and I enjoyed it.
It's fascinating. Already with those 2 sessions, you've got a collection and variety of standpoints as well. So really interesting. Then the final session was on reporting and data to build ESG portfolios. This was arguably the most complex session. So can you run us through this workshop? What was your key takeaway?
Yeah, well, the challenge is, it is data. I was on another session today, and everybody was saying, I need to know about the human rights. I need to know about the slavery. I need to know about the corruption. Everybody wants a different angle, which kind of plays into ESG. If you're the small, the corporate, this plucky protagonist, Keith McGrain of Core, he's producing slices of data on slices of data on slices of data for every single person that he meets, and it's just not sustainable. So what we were trying to do was trying to figure out how can we match everybody's needs, so not too much a request for too much data from the corporate, a standardization of information so that the sort of big, passive institutional investment kind of indexes can see a comparative baseline of one versus another. And then how do we also address the need of the impact investor or the hedge fund that's looking for, a unique insight that gives them a sort of specific alpha beta generation. So a tall order, and the general received wisdom at the moment is that what you do is you create a standard taxonomy, which is how green is green and what shade of green is it and what size and shape and form is it, and that's it. You put everything therefore into those grids on a spreadsheet, but the problem with that is, of course, every data set originates from some, agriculture is different to pharmaceuticals, is different to, software generation. So we actually took, Matt Smith from Agrimetrics, and, again, a Microsoft colleague now at, doing the work there, where he spoke about an agricultural example. And this is where it kind of got complex, but we thought if we could say, if you could take, a cow, a field, hay, methane, soil quality, there's a ton of variables there. And if you could somehow find a way that a buyer of that data could go, well, I don't need all of that. You've given me 10 things there. I only need 2 of those. They could quite easily cherry pick that, put that into their report to get what they need, or their analysis to get what they need for their portfolio creation. But on the other side of the coin, it needs to be standardized enough so that the people that are looking at it in terms of governance and audit could go, well, where did that data come from, and how do I benchmark that versus another set? And of course, super complicated stuff. But we use this Wardley map to try and sort of start to frame out, well, what's customized and bespoke and therefore going to be expensive, what's commodity and everybody could do pretty easily. And if the desire at the top end of the map is get everybody's data by tomorrow. How far do we have to move that down to be practical? So we started to shift these levers on all of the debate sides, and it'll carry on. We didn't get to the end of the story, but
Well, exactly.
It's a great education.
Well, exactly. I think if you'd been given the time, you would have been going on for hours because there's so many areas to discover. So all in all then, what was achieved from sort of day one and day two's sessions, and how do you think we're set up for the next workshop in the series of events to come?
Well, I think all of this is it's a very collaborative community. I think the people that are working in this, all volunteer their time outside of their day jobs, and they're supremely busy with all sorts of, particularly in this time of COVID. It's people are working ridiculous hours and looking after their families. So it's a very collaborative set. So I think what it does is it brings together real world expertise to sweat these issues so that we can get past the superficial. Because conference world, everybody repeats the same sound bites, so this gets past that and gets into substance. That helps the community just of participants in terms of the advisory actually to learn a lot, and then they all tend to network with each other and sort of solve things outside of the event. But I hope for the audience what it does, and certainly I got the feedback, was that it again accelerates their thinking past the superficial and into the substance. And as we then create the reports out of this, where we give people the content I've just been referring to, and we frame it with a bit more kind of context, what we hope that will do is that will go broader, again, increase that collaborative group. And subsequently, we even want to do a bit of open source and hackathon on a few of these ideas. And we've had a few people say, yeah, come on, let's get together, let's build that thing and see whether it flies. So that's what it's all about. It's about getting into gear and, walking the walk.
Well, I, for one, am feeling increasingly invested in these events and really looking forward to the follow-up. So thank you so much for speaking with us today, and it was good fun. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I always appreciate your support. Thanks a lot.